Alright, so it was my birthday yesterday. Now, when I was younger, I had Martin Luther King's speech, all 3 or 4 pages of it on my wall, on my university campus. I had it on my wall in my house as well. I had his picture on my laptop front screen. I was very passionate about Martin Luther King. So when I realized the speech was on the 28th and my birthday was on the 27th, I was like, why didn't my mum just hold on just a little bit longer? Then I would have had a real connection with that speech. But it doesn't matter, because a great person was also born on the 27th. Much greater than me. A lady some of you may have heard of called Mother Teresa. She was born on the 27th of August 1910. She died at the age of 87 on the 5th of September 1997. So she died at the age of 87. I was born in 87, so we must have a link somehow. I know I'm begging. But she was an amazing woman, a great woman. She took an oath of celibacy, an oath of poverty. The way she lived her life challenged every single person in this room. And I have a personal obsession with the term great. Reason being is, just like the term winning, I feel like it's very subjective. I feel like, depending on who you are, maybe if you have a faith, maybe if you were born in a certain setting, certain country, the term great and the term winning has its own meaning to you. To me, the greatest amongst us shall be the servant, as Martin Luther King said, as I learned from Jesus Christ. So since I was 12 years old, had an obsession with this term, great. So I've looked at people throughout time who are great, and they have inspired me to want to do some of the things I'm doing right now. And Martin Luther King in particular was someone that inspired me, probably because of the colour of his skin, maybe. Something we'll come on to in a sec. So this term great has inspired me. And I've looked at Martin Luther King, and what I found with Martin Luther King was that a lot of people look at those 17 minutes and think, wow, what a speech. Inspiring speech, a manifesto for America, for a country at a time in a period where they had great challenges. He looked to the future and said, this is where I feel we need to go, we need to be. But Martin Luther King is not actually unique, because if you look at any great person, you'd probably find some principles, some values, some characteristics that are very similar to Martin Luther King. Is someone still here with me? I'm not preaching, but is somebody still here with me? Yes? Anyone still? Okay. All right, so for example, if we look at the speech, 28th of August 1963, 1 year later, in a prison in South Africa, apartheid South Africa, there was a man who goes by the name of Nelson Mandela, and he was defending himself when he was on the way, when he's been tried for being anti-apartheid. And his famous speech, the opening words were, "I am the first accused." But he also spoke about some interesting things that Martin Luther King also spoke about. And one thing in particular that he said that I'm completely inspired by was that apartheid was something he was against, something he would fight for all of his life, but something he was also willing to die for. And Martin Luther King one day said, if a man has not found something that he is willing to die for, he isn't fit to live. Nelson Mandela then went on to prison for 26 years, 1964 to 1990. 4 years later, he became the first black president of New South Africa. And in his opening speech, those famous words, "free at last," was what captivated a nation. Free at last. And what were the closing words of Martin Luther King's speech? Free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last. Some of you, I've seen quite a few of you, the speakers have spoken about Jesus, Jesus Christ in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, spoke about how he came to set the captives free. So great people in history have underlying values, principles, characteristics that you could pinpoint at any point in their life. And so when I look at that, it inspires me to think, well, if I want to be great, you might call it me being a bit too ambitious, but I desire to be great. I desire to die as somebody who had given his life for his generation. That is my desire since I was a young kid. So if I desire to be great, what are some of those principles that I could identify to see if I could have or I will need to adopt to be great? I looked at that and I had five. I found five. Would you like to know the five? Yes. Yeah, you sure? Yes. Unfortunately, I wrote them down because I couldn't remember all of it. Yes. Yesterday I didn't really plan well for today because it was my birthday. Yeah, so number one, the first thing I found a great person has, or someone on their way to being great, is a historical and present context. So Martin Luther King, in his opening words, spoke about 50 years ago when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln. So he had a context. And then he spoke about, 100 years later, the people still are not free. He had an understanding of the past and the present. My passion in the UK and the work I do in politics is within equality. So I understand that on the 22nd of June 1948, the Empire Windrush landed on the docks of Tilbury, not too far from where I live today. And they had 493 Caribbeans who came to help to rebuild this country. I then understood how people came from Pakistan and India and Australia, and how there was a split. So the guys who had fair skin were called Commonwealth migrants. The guys from Australia and New Zealand. The guys from countries where they had a bit more of a shade were called new Commonwealth migrants. Who people wanted to push and make sure they weren't noticed, but obviously it didn't work. So I understand that context, and I understand that today we still have great challenges when it comes to equality. I understand the historical and the present context. If you want to do anything in this world, even if it's not to be involved in politics or to be the next Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela, you just want to be the number one in technology, you want to be the number one in, I don't know, makeup or business or, number one teacher, whatever it is that you feel you want to be great, even if it's just the best parent, you must understand the historical and the present context of what it is you want to achieve. Does that make some sense? Yeah. The second thing I found was that if you really want to be great, you need an inner circle. So when I was 18, I was the president of my African Caribbean Society, and for me that was my platform for being mini Martin Luther King. It didn't quite work out, but I looked at what he did and I tried to do similar. I had my own inner circle. It was a tight inner circle, and we were focused on the vision that we had. When I was 19 and I set up my first business, my focus was on attracting an inner circle that would help to take me where I need to go. Right now, I have a very close inner circle. I'm focused on the fact that I need to make sure there are people around me who will be there during the good times and even the bad, and when the times get bad, they won't disappear. I remember when I used to run my first organization, and there was a time when we had no money and we had rent, right? Very interesting. And we had a few members of staff, and not as many as the organization has now. And we couldn't pay them. So we said, we can't pay you. And they just said, okay. And they stayed. And it worked for months. And now, one of the ladies who was there, she hadn't finished university. She works in an organization right now, and she, at the age of 21, is one of the senior members of an organization who has, I think at the moment, about 35 people at its payroll, offices in London and East Midlands. 21 years old. But during the bad times, she showed herself faithful. So we knew that this person was someone we could not ever lose, and we had to honor, no matter what. 21, she looks after a budget that is very large. She tells off people much older than her very regularly. I've seen it. Yeah? An inner circle. Martin Luther King, in April 1943, he was in prison. He came out of prison, and there was a guy who goes by the name of Clarence Jones, as many people know. Clarence Jones actually wrote the first part of that speech. He was a member of Martin Luther King's inner circle. Could you imagine being there the day before with Martin Luther King trying to put together a speech that would represent a chapter in a country's history? Could you imagine the privilege of being part of that? I'm sure, I am convinced that there are so many people who were there for parts of the journey but decided, look, I want to do my own thing. I want to be that person that is at the front. I feel like I want to have my own civil rights movement. And they missed out on a moment in history because they didn't want to be part of an inner circle. Instead, they wanted to be that guy in the middle. But anyway, you need an inner circle. Number 3 is you must have a dream that is focused on a person or a people. If your dream is simply about making millions, mark my words, you will not be satisfied. If your dream is focused on material possessions, your eyes will never be satisfied. I am not broke. And every time, I'm privileged to, for my financial status maybe to go up or to win a contract or whatever. I notice how sometimes there is temptation for my lifestyle to adapt a little bit. And sometimes when I see that, I reflect and I think, wow, as a human being, my eyes will never be satisfied. Never. I will consistently have to battle with the fact that even if I have more, my human nature will want me to want more. So if you think, once I make X, I'll be fine, it's a lie, it's deceit. You'll always have to battle with yourself for that. Today I was with a guy who's a vice president of an investment bank, and I could see in his eyes that this guy has a massive house in North Surrey, I think he said, or wherever he's living a great life. He says, you know what, Samuel, I want to make director. It's like, okay, what the hell does that mean? He said, I'm going to be MD in 2 years of this massive, one of the biggest banks in the world. His eyes were not satisfied, and trust me, if he needed anything in this world, he could probably have it. Your eyes will never be satisfied. So your dream must be focused on a person or people bigger than you. Something that will allow you to consistently be selfless, that will motivate you to make sure you have the right motives. I believe that's important. Number 4 is, if you want to be great, is something very interesting. You must be willing to die. You must be willing to die. If you truly want to be great. So when you leave this room, if you say, look, Samuel, I'm not married yet, I've got a car, a wife, or the husband, kids, or a degree, I'm not willing to die, then I'll challenge you to say maybe you're not willing or desiring to be great. In my opinion. In my opinion. Now, I grew up in church, and in church we have this saying, die to self. So I believe that when it comes to dying, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're dying physically. I don't think we should ever decide, I want to be great, so I'm going to run the motorway today so everyone can say I'm great. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go and commit suicide or whatever. It means that even whilst you're living, you're able to deny yourself. You're able to sacrifice for what it is that you feel you're here to serve humanity with. The final thing I would say I found about people that desire to be great is that their vision is inspiring. If you cannot inspire anybody by what it is you want to achieve, then I would challenge you to go back to the drawing board and try to redefine the vision. Someone once described the vision as a picture of a preferable or desirable future that inspires someone to perform. A picture of a preferable or desirable future that inspires someone to perform. If you truly want to be great, if you want to be a leader, if you want to serve your generation, then you have to have a vision that inspires. So very quickly, before I leave this stage very gracefully, just to talk about a bit about myself. So yeah, when I was 19, I set up my first business and also joined a political party. You don't need to go into that right now. And I have a clear vision. I know exactly what I want to achieve. And I started working within business. I left university at 21, yeah, and I was broke for 2 months, 2 years, 2 months, 2 years. Yeah, all my friends, I have a friend now who's an associate director at a bank, UBS, and we were age mates. So I left uni, she went to Accenture, I went to, I was broke for 2 years. But I had a vision. I knew exactly what it is I had to achieve. I couldn't go elsewhere because it wasn't my purpose, wasn't my destiny, wasn't where I needed to be. 2 years. I remember the first business meeting I had. I only had money to get there. I had money to get from Barnet to London Bridge, and it was a lunch meeting. A very important lady, and I had no money. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And she took me to this restaurant called The Roast. I don't know the Roast. Roast is a very nice restaurant on the bridge. Go there if you have money, don't if you don't. And so I went there and she started ordering stuff. I was looking at the prices, I was thinking, my goodness, even on a normal day, the starter, that would be it. So I was there, so she was ordering, so I thought, what am I going to do? She's ordering, so I thought, I have to order too, right? I'm just going to sit there and watch her eat. So I started ordering, and I was on Facebook saying, look, I'm just at this restaurant right now, only God knows what's going to happen. And then, so she was like, do you want a drink? I was like, no, I have water, that's fine. And, so after the mains, then it was time for dessert. Obviously, I was like, no, thank you, do you want dessert? And then when it was time to pay, I went for my wallet, knowing, there was nothing there. And she said, no, don't worry, Sammy, I've got this. I said, you sure? I'll never forget that. Those 2 years humbled me. They made me realize that if you're really passionate about achieving anything in life, you must be willing to sacrifice. If you don't want to sacrifice, particularly in business, if you don't want to sacrifice the time, if you don't want to go without, business probably isn't for you. Like, just be like my friend, go and work in Accenture, and you'll be fine. And funnily enough, I'm not even just saying this to boast. There are people that, I remember I was the vice president of another investment bank, and this guy was French. He's like, Samuel, I'm not happy. I was like, why are you happy? He was like, I want to go and do education and teach people in Africa. I was like, go. Can't go. Why can't he go? Because his dream from when he was young was something he couldn't dare take the risk for. He felt like he had to go and have a structured life. And the longer you leave your structured life, the more difficult it will be for you to chase your dream, unfortunately. If you are young now and you have less overheads and you can't go and live your dream, what are you going to do when you're married and you have kids and you have more responsibilities? What are you going to do? It's just a question. But anyway, that's me. I did that, started my own business, now I have a few other businesses that I kind of oversee. But I'm a bit of an entrepreneur, so I get bored very easily. And then I went to work in politics. So when I was 23, I said, look, I've been involved in politics for like 4 years, but not full time. So I became an activist for like a year, and then I went to work in Parliament, and I was helping like the Prime Minister and stuff to do interesting stuff. And this is a 24-year-old guy at the time that, trust me, did not deserve to be there. I guarantee you. Guarantee you. The only difference between me and anyone else was that I said, look, this is what I'm passionate about. This is my niche. I'm going to stick to it. So earlier this year, I'm now currently on political sabbatical. Yeah? And I'm just looking after some of my business interests. And then come 2015, by God's grace, I will be back there. Now, my book, I don't sell it because I don't need anybody's money. And also because I don't want people to feel like, I wrote the book because I need your money. I wrote it because, I know there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are more intelligent than me, more passionate about making a difference than me, but they may struggle to find people that looks a bit like them, whose story was very similar, who maybe started off in humble beginnings, who, like me, whose first memories were of domestic violence or parents telling them they were never good enough, or like me, hung around with people that weren't the most positive, or didn't really know how to navigate through this world, or had no one to give them the money to set up their business, etc., etc. I wrote the book because I felt like there were people from similar backgrounds to me. You just need to know that somebody who is average was able to do it, and so could they. I call it winning the race because it's a play of words. One is there's a scripture that says, run the race in such a way as to win it. Love that scripture. But also because I'm passionate about race. I'm passionate about race equality. So winning the race is about where do I feel Britain as a country needs to go on its race journey to get to a place where people are more equal and where society is fairer and justice is the theme of the day. So that's a bit about me. I will stop now. Thank you for listening, and thank you for smiling.
Would you like to be at our next event? Visit dreamnation.co.uk and join our free mailing list in the top right-hand corner. You will receive exclusive content and free updates on future projects so that you'll never have to miss out again. Work hard and keep dreaming.